but Spider-Man does so in a way that uniquely reflects America's role in the world. Just look at Peter Parker, a young kid, coming of age, who's suddenly gifted an insane amount of power. He's constantly wrestling with how to wield this power, or, well, if he even should. Parker mirrors America, a young country that post-World War II happened upon a massive amount of power, and constantly grapples with how to responsibly wield this newfound power, if it should at all. America doesn't have a long history to draw upon for moral direction, just as Peter doesn't have any parents to guide him. In fact, the only piece of advice Peter's ever given comes from Uncle Ben. You know the line.
With great power comes great responsibility.
Uncle Ben's famous words reflect many ideas inherent to American exceptionalism. You know, the idea that America is dope and thus has a duty to lead the world. This idea is encapsulated by the city upon a hill, a metaphor taken from the New Testament by American colonists to describe their mission, to be a beacon of hope to the rest of the world. Its use still continues. For example,
the eyes of all people are truly upon us, and our governments must be as a city upon a hill, constructed and inhabited by men aware of their great trusts and their great responsibilities.
Or this Ronald Reagan speech.
The past few days, when I've been at that window upstairs, I've thought a bit of the shining city upon a hill.
This view of America has been reflected in each Spider-Man film, from Tobey Maguire to Andrew Garfield to likely Tom Holland. In each adaptation, Peter struggles with the weight of his sudden powers, yet feels a moral responsibility to use them justly, a dilemma that mirrors two American philosophies, the reluctant sheriff and the American Jeremiad. The reluctant sheriff, first proposed by American diplomat Richard Haas, basically takes your standard grizzled Clint Eastwood cowboy and applies it to US global policy. The US doesn't want to enforce international order, but since there isn't anyone else as powerful, we gotta suck it up and govern out of the rest of the world. Put simply, the US doesn't want to regulate global politics, but must do so to prevent the rising tide of violence. Similarly, Peter Parker, both the Maguire and Garfield versions, isn't even sure he wants to be Spider-Man, yet ultimately feels obligated. Much of the drama stems from Peter's struggle to balance his personal life with his duty as a superhero. In Spider-Man, Peter barely makes it to his Thanksgiving dinner because he's recovering from a fight with the Green Goblin. And in The Amazing Spider-Man 2, Peter's late to his own high school graduation because he's gotta fight Paul Giamatti or something. According to Haas, the reluctant sheriff must also create a posse, people who work with the sheriff for the good of their town. Spider-Man works with New Yorkers to create his own kind of posse. In Spider-Man, New Yorkers throw debris off the Queensboro Bridge to distract the Green Goblin. In Spider-Man 2, the train commuters keep Spider-Man's identity a secret.
We won't tell nobody.
In The Amazing Spider-Man, all the New York City crane operators aid Spidey in web-slinging across town, and in The Amazing Spider-Man 2, the fire department helps Spider-Man to fight Electro. Even still, the weight of being Spider-Man is too much for Peter. In Spider-Man 2, Peter just flat out says he can no longer carry on being a superhero because it's ruining his personal life.
I want a life of my own.
And in The Amazing Spider-Man 2, Peter makes a similar confession to Gwen.
I know there's a million reasons why we shouldn't be together, but I'm tired of them. I'm tired with every single one of them. We've all got to make a choice.
And here's where the American Jeremiad kicks in. According to thinkers Sackvin Berkovich and William Fispanos, the American Jeremiad emphasizes that it's the US's God-given mission to save this world. It's like the reluctant sheriff minus the reluctance. If we lose our focus for even half a second, or think that someone else might pick up the slack of spreading democracy, godliness, and morality, the world could literally end, which to a lesser extent is exactly what happens in each Spider-Man film. Take Uncle Ben's death. When Peter lets a thief get away,
you could have taken that guy apart.
I missed the part where that's my problem.
His moral inaction leads to his uncle's demise, forever reminding Peter that if he doesn't live up to his ethical mission, people will die. Likewise, when Peter quits being Spider-Man, the bad guy power vacuum immediately fills in. In Spider-Man 2, during our hero's absence, the crime rate spikes and Doc Ock is able to rebuild his Doomsday reactor. When Doc captures Mary Jane and the reactor becomes an existential threat to the city, Peter realizes he must be Spider-Man to save millions of lives. Even after Peter and MJ become official, they recognize that it's his duty to protect the city.
Go get him, Tiger.
Similarly, after Gwen's death forces Peter to quit in The Amazing Spider-Man 2, the Green Goblin builds up a network of supervillains, including the weird mech Rhino Giamatti dude. The film ends with Peter realizing that without Spider-Man, the city is doomed to escalating violence.